Nice. Thank you. So before we get started, a little bit about me. As we said, my name is Elliot Silver. I'm the lead FHIR software engineer with ResMed, a medical devices company. I'm also currently co-chair of HL7 International's Devices Work Group and a member of the HL7 Canada Council. I've held workgroup leadership roles with HL7, IHE, and DICOM. I've been involved with FHIR for over 10 years, and I'm based in Vancouver, Canada. The basic problem we're going to look at today is that most tutorials and documentation about the HL7 IG Publisher focus on the IG authoring portion of the process. They show how to profile a resource, create a value set or a code system, and write supportive narrative. And maybe they'll show you how to do it with sushi. They'll even show you how to build the IG to an output directory on your local machine, and then, thank you very much, they're done. Did you notice what they don't show you about using the HL7 Implementation Guide Publisher? Publishing. So, because most documentation and tutorials end with the building of the IG to a local directory, authors are on their own to figure out where to go from there. They take the output of the build, slap it up on a website, or push the IG to GitHub and let the auto-build process compile it and copy it to build.fhir.org, and the author thinks, done, published. And on the surface, that seems good enough. Well, today we're going to discuss why that isn't good enough and how to use IG Publisher's Go Publish mode to actually publish an IG. Obviously, for this to make sense, I'm going to assume you understand the basics of authoring a FHIR implementation guide with the IG Publisher. If you happen to be a fan of FHIRly's simplifier for publishing your IGs, you're welcome to stay, but you don't need to deal with any of the things we're going to be discussing. You get different things to worry about. None of what we're going to be talking about here is new. It's all out there on HL7 websites, the HL7 Confluence, HL7 tooling implementation guides, but all of that is fragmented, it's out of date. What I've tried to do here is distill all those disparate sources down and give you a single organized storyline. Okay, why publish an implementation guide anyhow? Well, the point of an implementation guide is that it conveys to others the expectation for FHIR communications. Solitary interoperability is not a thing. If I wrote an IG and left it on my laptop, it wouldn't be doing anyone much good. We need to get it out of that local directory and make it available somewhere. Once it's out there, others can read it, implement it, derive their implementation guides from it, and so on. Even corporate IGs need to be shared within your organization or with your partners. Now, although implementation guide publication is a good thing, not all IG authors need to know how to publish. So, for example, HL7 International's implementation guides are published by their staff. So the HL7 IG authors just need to know how to author the guide. But if you're not in an organization with a publication staff, or you are your organization's publication staff, you're going to want to know what to do once it's authored. By the way, we usually only publish significant versions of an IG, an actual release, a draft for comment release, and so on. Releases that mark some sort of milestone you might want to be able to refer back to in a week or 6 months or 3 years later. The IG publication mechanism isn't designed for the day-to-day development builds. For that, you're going to be wanting to use the complementary continuous integration IG auto build process. Okay, so to understand the benefits of and how to use IG Publisher's Go Publish mode, we're going to go through the process of publishing an IG to a website. And to make it completely meta, I've done an implementation guide about publishing implementation guides. That means that once we're done, you'll be able to go to that site and find all the details and more of everything that we're talking about. We've only got 35 minutes, can't get everything in, okay? We're gonna go through the steps, setting up your publication environment, preparing your guide for publication, and then running the IG Publisher in publication mode. The source for today's IG is on GitHub, and that QR code, which I'm standing right in front of, will take you there. Throughout the presentation, I've got QR codes for most of the URLs we're talking about, so you can grab them. The implementation guide itself is pretty simple. It's got a profile, it's got an example of the profile, but the real important part is it's got about 3 or 4 pages of markdown narrative that takes you through all of the steps. Okay. As we said, most tutorials end with building a copy of the implementation guide on your local machine. This is what my IG looks like on my laptop. And notice at the top of every page, it proudly declares it's a local development build. Obviously, having the IG on my local machine is not publishing. I've also put my IG in a GitHub repo and set up the CI auto build process on it. Anytime I update my repository, the auto build process will build the guide and copy the output directory to build.fhir.org. Now, if you're following along, you can see the CI build at this address. If you want to, you can type it in very quickly or scan the QR code. And I've got to stop actually clicking on the links in my presentation. For many people, the IG auto build is how they publish their IGs. However, there's several problems with that. First, look at this big yellow box. It says, this is not an authorized publication. It changes regularly. That's not really a message you want to be giving to your implementers. But also, the next time, anytime I update my GitHub repo, it's going to replace my published IG. So that's not really a controlled publication. What's worse is that the main output of the auto build process is whatever is on the main branch of the repo. What happens when you decide to release version 2 of your IG? If you push it to the main branch, you've just caused release 1 to disappear. The auto build process will build branches of your repo and copy them to the CI server. So that might be tempting, but how would you find those other branches? You see where it says directory of published versions? The code that generates that directory doesn't know you've got your other versions on branches. It's not going to know what to put in there. And actually, if we were to go click on that link right now, we'd get a 404 error. There is no directory of published versions by default. The publication process is expecting a history page to be published under the canonical base URL for your IG, which in this case is argentixinfo.com/IG/howtopub. And we haven't created that page yet. Another concern is that build.fhir.org cleans out builds more than 3 months old to conserve disk space. I think the policies changed, but for what they do with main versus other branches, but regardless, if you're publishing there, your content exists at the whim of the HL7 gods. So depending on build.fhir.org is not a good long-term publishing plan. Okay. The IG auto build process okay. One final thing I want to mention is what are called canonical redirects. Now, it's not required, but it is nice if the official URL of an IG artifact, such as a profile, resolves to a page describing that profile. It's also nice if you were to make an HTTP request to that page asking for the content as JSON or XML, you get back the resource as JSON or XML. If we look at the official URL for this profile, going to that address isn't going to get us anything, since right now we're publishing to the CI build server and the official URL is elsewhere. Even if it was published to a location matching the official URL, a local build or the CI auto build of the IG doesn't have the behind-the-scenes scripting to return those alternate representations either. Now, I don't want you to get down on the CI auto build. It's really useful for sharing in development work and letting others see your continuous integration build of your IG. And so, for example, if you wanted to go peek at the latest version of this IG, which actually includes a video of me going through the whole process, you can go to the CI build site. Okay. Another option some people use to publish their IG is to do a local build using the IG Publisher and just copy the output to a website. I've done that with a variant of my IG and uploaded it to my web server. And you can even see that the banner proclaims this is a local build, because it is. I've just taken my local build and copied it to the server. With some pretty minor differences, the result is essentially the same as using the IG auto build. It has all the same problems, except hopefully it's not going to disappear on you unexpectedly. Even though the IG is now uploaded to a location that matches its canonical URL, the canonical resolution still won't work for the patient profile because the redirects aren't set up. By the way, this is an older build of the IG, so the template colors have changed a bit. Okay, so we've seen a few examples of how not to publish. Let's look at the correct way of publishing using the IG Publisher. As I previously mentioned, there's 3 parts to using the IG Publisher. Setting up the publication staging environment, getting all the support files, creating the appropriate directories, etc. This is done once per site. If you're publishing multiple IGs to your web server, they'll all use that same staging environment. Next, we'll set up the IG itself for publication. Most of this needs to be done each time you publish an IG, but there's a bit that can carry over from one release of the IG to the next, so you're not totally starting from scratch each time. And then, as the last step, you run the IG Publisher in Go Publish mode, you upload, and you finalize things. That's it. Simple. Thank you for coming to my talk. Seriously, though, let's dive into each of those steps. Okay, to set up the publication environment, you'll need a directory on your local machine with the most recent IG Publisher jar file, a copy of your IG project repo, and a copy of some HL7 repos. IG history contains the HTML for that directory of published versions we keep hearing about. FHIR web templates are a set of templates we could customize to make the styling of that history page match the styling of our IG template. And IG registry is the master list of IG publications known to FHIR tooling. We're going to need to make some updates to it to tell it about our guide. So I've forked the repo, and theoretically we'd be using my copy. You're also going to need to create a publication directory where we'll prepare our publications. Within that, the template directory will hold template customizations, and the web root directory is where our built IGs end up, along with some other files we'll discuss. Since we'll reuse this publication directory for every release of every IG on your site, consider putting it in a publication repo so you don't lose the history. We'll eventually upload the content of WebRoot to your web server. Which kind of brings us to another point. If you're publishing using IG Publisher, you do need to supply your own web server. So we've got the directories laid out. We would copy the clone templates to the newly created publication template directory. And this is the template styling that's applied to that history page, the directory of published versions. Once those templates or those style files are copied over, you can edit the history so it matches the styling of your IG. It allows you to insert customized content into the HTML header near the start or end of the HTML body. Other files allow customization of your search page. So set the fave icon for your history page, add a logo, apply your custom CSS, go wild. The next thing we do is create a publish setup JSON in the web root directory, and we'd fill it in as shown. The URL is the URL of all your IGs are published under. We're going to end up uploading the content of the web root directory to this location. To generate the redirects on our web server, we have to indicate that we're using Apache and that the redirect scripts need separate XML or JSON files for each MIME type. For example, needing one XML file for text/XML and another XML file for application FHIR plus XML, rather than both being able to use the same file. Fill in the name of the publisher. And then the layout rules section says that for an IG with an npm package having 3 parts, following the pattern of ca.argentixinfo.something, that translates into a canonical of http:/argentixinfo.com/ig/that third part. And a path within the web root directory will be /that third part. Finally, the location of the RSS feed files, and we'll look at those next. Okay. You use the RSS feeds to alert the tooling when a new IG is published. Publication feed XML is a feed listing the home page of each IG published on your site, and package feed XML lists the npm packages of each IG. You'll need to customize the content of each of those to reflect your organization and publication layout. The IG Publisher will add to each of those files every time you publish. Okay. One last file to prep our staging environment. For a new publication website, this is a JSON file with only an empty object, so we could easily create that by hand, but this is the hard way to do it. Running the IG Publisher with the generate package registry option and specifying the directory we want to put the output in. This is also the same directory that would be scanned if you ran this option to regenerate the file later. Okay, again, during publication, this file is going to get updated with details about your IG. Our staging directory is basically all set up. One more thing to do before we look at the IG itself. We need to let the FHIR tooling know your organization will have published implementation guides. So in the IG registry repo, we'll edit package feeds.json. In the existing package feeds.json file, you'd scroll down to the end of that feeds list and add an entry for your organization. Enter in the name of your feed, its URL, and a contact email. In the email, you need to replace @ and period with pipe and underscore, and then save that file. Okay, we're now done setting up the publication environment. Everything we've done so far is a one-time setup that will be reused for all your publications, so consider committing the changes to IG registry and publication directories. Now, let's look at the specific IG we want to publish. Switching to your project directory, you want to make sure your implementation guide resource is all ready. If you're doing a standard sushi project, your IG resource is generated from the sushi config YAML file. So you'd edit that instead, which is what we're going to do. Check that the package ID and canonical are correct. They should match the layout pattern of your publish setup file. Update the status, likely changing it from draft to active. Update the version. Usually you'd have -CI or on the version number that needs to be removed, or you'd need to increment the version number. Update the release label as appropriate for your publication. For example, change it to release. Review the information for the publisher to make sure it's still correct and current. And finally, if your IG has any dependencies, make sure they are to the correct specific versions of those packages. You don't use dev or current dependencies. There's other fields you probably want to review before putting this out there to the world. And depending on various settings, you might want to check, say, the copyright date or version numbers in your other resources. Okay. Don't forget to save your updated IG resource or sushi config. Speaking of dependencies, you want to make sure you're using a fixed current version of your IG template. The reason we're using fixed versions is so that we can get back to this exact same configuration if we need to rebuild or issue a technical correction. To be safe, I'd recommend updating your IG Publisher and sushi installs, clean out your .FHIR cache, your input cache, fish-generated output, temp, and template directories so that we don't accidentally pick up some stray leftover file. Okay, here's the meat of setting up your implementation guide for publication, creating the publication request file. This file provides the necessary information for the publisher for how to handle this publication in this series of publications for this IG. Confirm that package ID, version, and status match your implementation guide resource or sushi config YAML. Path is the URL that this publication will permanently live at. It's under the base canonical for your implementation guides, and it's usually a version number or a release name, something like 2.0 ballot 1 or 2025 Q2. Mode controls where the output gets copied to. Depending on whether this is a milestone release, a working release, a technical correction, or whatever, will control whether, under the webroot directory, the content is copied to the base directory for your IG, in this case, how-to-pub, or to the version-specific directory, in this case, how-to-pub/1.0.0. Included a description of this release to go into the history. Everything we've talked about there so far applies for every release. The remaining elements are for the first time you publish your IG. First, obviously indicates that this is the first time we're publishing. Title is used on the history page and elsewhere for the title of your IG, and it should match your IG resource. Similarly, introduction appears at the top of the history page. CI build links to the continuous integration build of your IG, usually on build.fhir.org, as we were looking at earlier. And finally, I got ahead of myself. Finally, categories used to classify the IG in registry.fhir.org. There's a lot going on here, so I'll remind you, again, we're working towards publishing this, and all of the detailed descriptions will be there. Okay. Once we save the publication request, we're done setting up the IG. Build it to make sure it's all working. Check the build output for warnings and errors. Check the QA report. There shouldn't be any surprises because you check your QA report regularly to make sure nothing creeps in, right? Right? By the way, the QA report, stat blocks, includes information drawn from the publication request, so we can confirm there that all is good. Okay, we're set. We've got our staging environment prepared, we've got our IG prepared. Now, let's switch back to the publication directory and we're gonna run the publisher. The command line breaks down as invoke the publisher in Go Publish mode, tell it which IG project to publish, where to find the configuration files and where to put the output, where to find the history content template, where to find the history styling templates, where to find the registry file to update, and where to put temp files generated during the build. Running Go Publish can take a fair amount of time, and it may need to build your IG more than once. Okay. After you've built it, what would you have? Well, if you look in the webroot directory, you'd find package feed, publication feed, and package registry.json, all updated with the details of the published IG. Publish setup.json, that was our layout, is unchanged from what we'd set up earlier. There's a new directory, IG pubs zip, that contains IG packages and log files. And then there's the your IG directory. This is where you would land by default if you go to the IG website. It has all of your regular IG files for the current or milestone version publication. There's a subdirectory for IG assets, like CSS files. There's resource subdirectories to handle the canonical redirects. And in this directory are also the generated history and search files, as well as the asset files to support them. Underneath that, there's a directory for the permanent home of the IG you've just built. Again, it's got the standard IG files, including assets and redirect subdirectories, but there's no history in there. Any references to history points to the version in the directory above. When the next publication comes along, say 2.0, the 1.0.0 subdirectory remains unchanged. A new 2.0 subdirectory is added with that version's content, and the main IG directory gets replaced with the 2.0 content, assuming it's a milestone release. The history file would also get updated to reflect an additional publication. Okay. In the IG registry repo, our IG would now be listed in FHIR IG list.json, filled in with information from the publication request file. Initially, the description, authority, and country elements have values of question marks, so you should replace those with something actually useful. Description's obviously a description of your IG. Authority is the organization publishing the IG, and country is where the IG applies or where the authority is located. Right, okay. Now, it's time to upload the contents of your webroot directory to your website. You'll also want to commit the changes to your publication directory and to your IG project to reflect the as-published versions, just in case you ever need to go back to the state. Go into the IG project and prep it for your next release. Update the sushi config or IG resources to set the status back to draft, increment the version, add a CI label to it, etc. And change all your dependencies back to current if you need to. Also, change the publication request file to match, and while you're in there, remove all of the first-time elements. Commit these changes and you're ready to go for the next round. Unless you're publishing a proprietary IG that you don't want the community to know about, commit the changes to the IG registry repo and do a pull request. After that, the HL7 tooling will be able to find your published IG and make it available to other authors. You've now published your IG. Congratulations. Okay, we've gone to all the trouble of publishing. Let's go to the website and see the IG. This is the IG at the published URL, and it says, where is it? This is the current published version. Not a local version, no scary warnings about it changing or being unauthorized. So that's an improvement. If we follow the link to the directory of published versions, we can see that it now actually goes to a history page. And from there, we can go to the current official release 1.1.0, which is where we just were, go to the CI build, which is here, or just specific releases, either the permanent home of 1.1 or to the earlier 1.0. Looking at this, you may have guessed I've actually published it more than once, so lying to you a little bit earlier on. If we follow the link to the permanent home of 1.1.0, we can see that the URL in the address bar confirms we're looking at 1.1.0, as does the publication box. Publication box also tells us this is the permanent home. It's good. Everything is as we expect. One last thing I've been promising you is these magical redirects. So let's look at them. The IG has a simple patient profile in it, imaginatively called My Patient. If we take the official URL of the profile, enter it into the browser address bar, it would take us to the HTML rendering of the current version of the profile. Note, the URL has been updated. All right, there we go. If we wanted to, we could accomplish the same thing from the command line by using curl, asking for this content as HTML, and the result would be the same HTML that was rendered in the browser there. On the other hand, we could make the request to the same canonical endpoint, but ask for the content as FHIR JSON, and we get back the JSON representation of the resource profile. Exact same endpoint, exact same command line, except we're asking for different content type. So that's how we can check that our redirects work. I think that's everything I wanted to show you guys. That concludes our fun. So what did you learn? We learned about the deficiencies of naive approaches to IG publishing and looked at how IG Publisher addresses them. We looked at setting up your publication and staging environment, preparing your IG for publication, running IG Publisher in Go Publish mode, and publishing the generated output, along with committing changes and preparing for future updates. In short, we learned how to publish an IG using the IG Publisher. Again, if you're interested, all the details of publishing are on the IG site, and as I said, the CI build also includes a video of me going through all of this. If you have any questions, we've got time for a couple. Otherwise, I'm here all week. Don't hesitate to reach out to me afterwards.
Thank you, Elliot. We are well on time. We have room for a lot of questions. So.
Hi, you briefly mentioned people using simplifier publishing run into a whole different set of problems. Can you elaborate on that?
I don't use simplifier a lot. I come from a developer background. I'm a software developer. The way the HL7 IG Publisher works matches with the way I think of things. Simplifier, it's like one of those website design tools that just doesn't do quite what I want it to. So it works perfectly well for all sorts of uses, just not mine.
Yeah. The IG Publisher is based on Jekyll?
Yes.
I'm not sure where the simplifier guide is based on, but it's not Jekyll. So when you switch, you have to really copy-paste the content.
Yeah, it's a completely separate tool chain for the narrative portions of it. The structure definitions you can move them back and forth. I work on the HL7 Canada CA baseline. We've got code, we've got the structures, we run them through HL7 IG Publisher. We generate temporary versions of the IG that way, and they were also publishing them using Simplifier from the same content. So there are ways of using both of them, and there's plenty of people here who are more than happy to talk to you about Simplifier. I know that.
Anyone else?
Hi. So I have a question about the IG or the auto IG builder.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can answer it. So it is hosted on a GitHub, and the way to implement it into your IGs is to integrate it into your GitHub repo. Am I correct?
Yeah, you add it as an application on your repo.
Yeah. Or is there any possibility to make it work with another version control, like Azure DevOps or like Azure Pipelines? Is there?
I know people have done that. I don't know how to do that, though. Yeah, and I know people have also, done Docker containers that will do it for you. But again, I don't know how.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for this introduction and a very nice presentation. Now I'm wondering, you basically create another repo just to do publishing. Where do you store that one? Do you have any recommendations on that?
Do I have any recommendations on that?
Yeah.
So that one's going to end up containing every version of every IG that you publish on your website. It's going to have a lot of HTML files. So I know there have been some concerns about using GitHub for a lot of binary content. I don't think there's any concerns around that. Other than just making sure that every time you do a publication, commit it so that if you ever lose it, you ever need to go back or whatever, you've got it there. I don't really have anything more specific. Did you have a concern?
Well, you set up a lot of configuration files, and I wonder whether you have a recommendation how you can include those in your basically IG template, your base IG, so you can extract them when needed again.
Yeah, you want to talk to Jose Texera. He's got, I think he has a repo template and also some scripts for doing a bunch of this stuff in an automated fashion.
We're already working with Jose. I'll talk to him. By the way, for people interested, we're working on a simple IG template that allows generation of multi-version FHIR IGs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mikael Rinetmäki from Finland. Since Bas brought this up and you said that you don't have any concerns about binary files, I want to raise mine. So I've been authoring the Finnish implementation guides, and build zips that get built are regularly over 100 megabytes.
Okay.
And then GitHub would say that, no, you need to have a special storage permission for those.
Interesting. Okay.
And I added a comment on the Hoover about this. So in my workflow, after I've published, I then create a release in GitHub, and that release can have associated assets. And there I can add these large build zips, but then I need to exclude them from the actual repo and not store them in the version control.
Right. So what you're referring to is that when you build the IG, one of the things that gets built is actually the entire website for that IG, the entire tree structure, gets zipped up and put in a file. And, you know, on a lot of websites, they can say, download the NPM, download the entire IG. That's what you would get if you were to download the entire IG. And that, yeah, I can see how that could easily get to be a large file. Yeah.
And it's even worse because it takes all of the previous versions of that IG within the same zip. So the actual purpose of that zip is that if you happen to lose the content on your server, then you can just unzip that and publish, and you're good to go. And that's really helpful rather than rebuilding your IG, because if you rebuild, then some of the dates get updated and so on. So
Yeah. Okay.
really good practice of keeping those in memory, but don't necessarily put them on
Thank
version
you.
control, but in release assets.
Now I've learned something.
We have a question online. Before preparing for, just a comment, before preparing for the next round. Oh. Anyone else with a question?
Okay. Reminder from Firely to please submit your feedback.
Yes, so you can give a feedback on devdays.com/feedback. And thank you for presenting, and thank you for listening to the presentation.
Thank you.